Are we live? Is this thing on? We're going to find out if y'all start showing up. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Hope everybody's jumping on in. Let's see. Looks like it's live. I love it how these things work. Let's see if we can get the chat going on here. If you're joining in, go ahead and say, hey. I want to make sure I'm using some new technology today. So I want to make sure that everything is working. So that, oh, there we go. Svetlana from England. Hi, how are you? Welcome, welcome. Matt's Ice Cream Show. Lenka from Dubai. Oh my goodness. So exciting to see y'all. Oh, Helen's here. Manuel. Cadmus World. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that y'all are here. We've got kind of a different setup going on here. I've got to give everybody like plenty of fair warning that I've got a 2-camera setup going on here today. A lot of technology happening. So y'all are like guinea pigs for me here today. So I'm going to try some new stuff out and we're going to see how it goes. Oh, very good. Oh, Lada from Brooklyn. Well, it's it's probably still morning in Brooklyn, right? 10 a.m. Very good. I love it. Who else is here? Ann Kristen, nice to see you. Sandra, what's up? Jalissa, welcome, welcome. All right. Oh, Sylvia's here. I love it. William, Indonesia. This is the best part about YouTube, right? We're all here hanging out together all across the world. It's bonkers. So you can see I've got my setup going on here today. I'm going to walk you through all of this. I do have my nifty notes, which I'm going to try to stick to because y'all know I can get off track. So I'm going to try to stay focused. And certainly we will be sure to spend some time at the end, do some Q&A. I do have a hard out at 50 minutes. So right now it is 8 a.m. here. So at 8:50, I'm going to have to sign off because then I've got another meeting to get ready for. But we're going to make the most of the time together, hopefully get you some information about tools that can help you out in terms of recording video with your phone. Super easy, right? All right. Good morning from Grimsby, Canada. Very good. I love it. Oh, coming in from LinkedIn. You're working on your computer. I know we're doing something different here today too. Live streaming from both YouTube and LinkedIn. So I've never gone live on LinkedIn before. So we're going to grand experiments today. If you don't take opportunities to experiment, you never learn new things. But so in case any of y'all follow me on Instagram, you saw that I was working with a chocolate cake the other day. Hope y'all enjoyed that delicious shot. But I'm curious, let's use the comment section here. Go ahead and leave in the comment section your favorite dessert. So I am a huge chocolate fan, but I will also say, big fan of tiramisu. There's something about like that little chocolate with the lady fingers and the espresso, mascarpone. So good. So love to know favorite desserts. Go ahead and throw them into the comment section. I love it. Hi, Gret from Puerto Rico. Welcome, welcome. From Calgary, Canada. We've got quite a party in the house today. So let's see, where are we going to start? So you're going to pop those, lemon pie, Alejandra. I support that. It's lemon season here in Arizona, so got plenty of lemons for you. So I wanted to give you context of like why this even happened. So my sister, she owns an Etsy shop, and she came to me and she's like, oh, I want to start doing video pins for Pinterest. Not sure if any of y'all in here kind of fall into that same boat of you're trying to create content for social media and maybe either you find a DSLR camera and all this like craziness a little overwhelming, or you just want something super convenient, which let's talk about cell phones being super convenient. So I had done some videos with her, but then we were like, how do I teach her how to do this herself? And she's not necessarily a photographer. I mean, she has the artistic skills and owns a camera, but she's like, I just want something easy and affordable. So that's when I went down the rabbit hole of figuring out how do we maximize the video coming out of our phone specifically for food photographers and tabletop photographers. She has her Etsy shop. They do printables. So how can we translate what it is that she's selling so that people can understand it on Pinterest? And so that's when I came across some really cool technology, because y'all know if you follow my channel, you're like, you know, Joni and her DSLRs and mirrorlesses and flashes and all this stuff. But, you know, as I started to realize, I'm like, these are so stinking powerful. And there's some really cool apps out there today. And so we're going to go through all of that. Oh, let's see. Shortbread, my mom's recipe box. I support that. I love it. Anything with chocolate, right? You're my buddy. Comet 64, New York style cheesecake. Very good. Very good. Okay. So as far as like what we're going to cover here today, again, we're going to try to make the most of the time together, save some time for Q&A at the end. But we're going to go through all the gear that I'm using here today, how you can translate that to your particular space and setup and what you're doing. The apps that I'm using, both for shooting as well as for editing. And then kind of the overall setup, and then some really important tips along the way. Because there are definitely things when you're shooting with your phone that you want to pay attention to. So if that sounds good to y'all. Oh, chocolate as well. Oh, you're a chocolatier. Well, I would think you would like chocolate. I would hope so. All right. So in terms of the gear, let's do a good overview here. Oh, Linda, I need a strawberry shortcake. Maybe we should shoot strawberry shortcake here today. But in terms of the gear that I'm working with, so I've got my iPhone. And so, all right, there we go. Oh, all of a sudden I'm getting a text message. Please, anybody who needs text message me, save it. So using the iPhone here today. And then very first thing, other than like all the technology, let's just talk about where you're shooting. One of the most important things in terms of your setup is making sure that you have a nice stable table. So you can see here, and I've talked about tables on my channel before. I've got other videos in this realm of why a table being stable is so important. But specifically for video, if you've ever shot video, let us know in the comments below or in the comments section if you've shot video before or if you've tried shooting video and maybe unsuccessfully. But one of the things that can really go wrong when we're shooting video, whether with a camera on our, like a DSLR or shooting with our phone, is if the table starts to shake, the footage will look shaky, if you've ever seen that. Because especially too, kind of what I've set up for here today is one of those top-down, like Tasty style BuzzFeed videos. And if the table starts moving around, you're like, oh, this footage is crazy. And so we want to make sure that we've got a really nice stable table set up here. So what I'm working with here today is I've just got one of my backgrounds, one of the thicker backgrounds. If you've done my DIY backgrounds and you've gotten your own plywood, some of those plywoods can be a little thin. Those can be a little wobbly. So make sure you've got a good, like thick, stable board. This one is one of my favorites from Erickson Surfaces. Y'all know them. If you're looking to buy an Erickson Surface, feel free to use the promo code BITESHOT10 at checkout for 10% off. But I've got that here on the two sawhorses, and it's like level on the floor. It's not wobbly. Like I can move, apply pressure. Because the thing we got to think about too for cooking videos or a lot of like action going on, even my sister's Etsy shop videos, where she's like coloring in these printables, is that any sort of movement, if it starts to shake the table, that's going to be visible in the video. So we just really want to make sure that first of all, we're working with a nice stable table. Let's see. Oh, Sarah Daniels, last time you shot outside, you had to put it on your VCR. What on earth? Who even owns a VCR anymore? Oh my gosh. Old technology. I love it. So stable table, number one. Please promise me you'll do that, because you'll just start to notice when you've got an unstable table. So next up on the list is then we want to have some sort of stand, something to hold our camera for us. Because especially, again, if we're going to be working at this level, you can kind of see my overall setup. I've got my light going on here. I've got all my food here. We want to have something that's going to hold that camera for us, because it's hard to hold it and keep it steady and do the work at the same time. So what I recently purchased, again, sort of inspired by my sister and her Etsy shop needs, this little guy right here. Can you see him? Yep. So it's just got this little base. I'm going to explain why, and you'll see here in a moment why this little iPad stand is helpful. And then it's just got this little adjustable arm right here, which you can see right there. Pretty nifty, right? And we can just adjust these by, adjusting the little different knobs so that we can get different directions. But effectively, we place the camera here, and I'll set all this up so you can see it. But this is really nice and stable too. What I like about this guy is it's got a really nice and stable base. Although, here's what I'm doing. And again, we're talking about stability. We were talking about how we want that table to be nice and stable, is that I'm not placing this directly on the table, which I did the first time I was shooting with this. Well, here's what happens. Again, we get in there and we start to do our video and we start to do the action, and maybe we're cutting something or we're stirring something. Well, if all of a sudden, again, there's any sort of movement on the table, this guy starts to shake, and then you've got shaky footage again. So what I've got over here is just a bar stool. We're not doing anything fancy today, y'all. So we've got our bar stool right there, and then I just set this over off the table. So it is on its own sort of dedicated surface, so that even if there is any sort of movement going on here or any sort of vibrations, that it is not impacting the camera, that the camera is still staying still. We got that? You can see stability is like number one for really professional looking video footage. Oh, you learned that the hard way. Totally. We've all learned that the hard way, right? After you've shot it and you're like, dang it, that's not what I was going for. All right. So we've got our table, we've got our arm here. And this, as well as everything else I'm talking about here today, is linked down the description box, or I don't know exactly where it is on LinkedIn, but if you're on LinkedIn, you'll find it there somewhere. I've got all these details linked so you can go grab those. All right. So in terms of the light, lots of questions about light come up, right? Now, y'all know I'm an artificial light junkie. You could absolutely 100% do this with natural light. No problem. There's nothing inherently better in this situation. I mean, well, hold that thought. You could totally do this with natural light though. Let's just imagine that instead of being a big softbox that I've got going on here, this is literally just a window, like a window in your kitchen, window in your living room. I've seen people shooting in their bathrooms because that's where the good windows are. So wherever you got to go to get the good light, certainly I'm hoping at this point you've spent some time on my channel. If you haven't, if you're brand new here, we're excited to have you. But check out some of my lighting videos and you'll understand the idea of diffusion and how we create that soft light with a nice large light source. So what I'm working with here today actually is the Godox 150 watt LED light, and it's the new one that's silent. And I bought this just a couple weeks ago because I was super curious, because one of the complaints about some of the older, not the older, I mean, they're only like a year or two old, but like the Godox 60 watt and some of the other models, they're a little loud in terms of the fan. So I bought the new one and it said it's silent, and oh my gosh, it really is. Like I can't hear it. Super silent. So I've got that set up. And then that comes though with this really small light, right? Like the head itself is very small. So we have to modify that. So I've got my softbox here. This is I think either it's the 35 or the 40 inch. Numbers not necessarily my thing, but again, it's linked down below. But it's just effectively very similar to a window, right? Like we just imagine if this was a window, we'd be getting a very similar look. So I've got that set up to light my scene. All right. And then something else that's helpful. So I do have, you don't necessarily need this. I talked about how this has a nice sturdy base on it. But again, because I'm just a little paranoid about, stability. And the worst thing ever is if you set something up and then it comes toppling over into your scene. We don't want that. So I've got these little concrete blocks that actually Ryan made for me for doing some product photography stuff, but they're also stinking heavy. So I just set that over here on the base. Help keep that stable. Everything's in place. I'm not going to lose anything. And then I also have my little spirit level, which you've seen me share this in videos before. So I'm going to go ahead and set everything up. I do also have an iPad. The iPad is completely optional, but you're going to see the little magical thing here in a moment as to why the iPad can be super helpful for this setup. All right. So I've got my phone. I'm going to go ahead and start up the phone. All right. Oh, so Tiris, sorry if I butchered your name. The camera that is filming me currently is the Nikon Z7, although I've got back over here, what is this? Oh, this is the Canon 5D Mark IV. So we're using all the cameras today. This will be my second camera, which I'll show you in a moment. And everything's being piped into the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, although they just recently announced the Extreme, which has the 2 USB ports. So for anybody who any of that makes sense to, you know why that's exciting. And then that's connected to Restream over here on my MacBook. So we got all the things. I know, I'm just like waiting for something to fail because I'm like, it's a lot of technology for one human to be using right now. All right. So first things first, camera phone, right? We want to make sure to clean that lens. Y'all have seen my shooting with your cell phone video, right? You've seen that one before. Make sure get it nice and clean, because if you got smudgy lens, don't matter how beautifully you've lit things, doesn't matter. All the important things don't matter if you've got a smudgy screen. All right, so next thing, so that's pretty much all the gear. Again, we'll go through Q&A at the end. So if you have questions about the gear, just save them. We'll get to the Q&A. All right, so next up, phone, the apps that you're gonna want. So there's lots of great apps. You can of course shoot in the native camera app on the phone, but I am going to highly recommend, it's not a cheap app, but like in comparison to like other photography stuff, it's super cheap, because we all know photography, expensive. But if you hop on over and you look for Filmic Pro, this will work on Apple, this will work on Android, it works on all the devices, but this is a great app specifically for shooting video, because we have some additional controls that you may not have in your native camera app, and just a lot of like super cool bells and whistles. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've just launched Filmic Pro. I've got it linked in the description box. So if you don't have that, or you just jump on your phone, Filmic Pro. All right. So it's got like a little red logo if you look it up. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach. Y'all can see this, right? We can attach the camera. We've just got that overhead. I've got my little tomatoes, got my bread, got some basil. Like I'm going to do like a little bruschetta sort of situation. All right, so that is all set up there. So now here's where the iPad comes into play. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fire up the iPad, and you can see I've got the iPad holder. Can y'all see that? Yeah. All right, iPad holder goes right here. I'm going to fire up the second camera here in just a moment. All right. Don't look at my password. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump to camera 2 at this point. Let's make sure this is in focus. Is that in focus? Can y'all see? All right. There we go. Yes, we can see it. Okay, so here's where things get really exciting. We can go ahead and hit connect. So there's Filmic Remote, then is a second, which is a second app, also part of the whole Filmic suite, where we can connect what we see on the camera, and we can control the camera on the phone from the iPad. I know, y'all know I'm a tethering nut. So this is like totally up my alley. But now we can see everything here that is going on up on our camera. So now we don't even have to touch the camera. We don't even have to touch the phone. We've got all the controls right down here. So hopefully you can see that. Y'all see that okay? Is that in focus? All right. So the actual picture though isn't in focus. So let me make sure I stick to my notes here. All right. One other thing that I forgot to mention. Talked about that little spirit level. So now that I've got the camera overhead, just gonna take that little spirit level, stick him right on top, make sure the camera is level, and it's not. All right. So a lot of times it's not. So that is going to be just super helpful again to get that more professional looking footage. If we're doing especially an overhead, we want to make sure everything's level, especially for video, because it's just so hard to. It's hard to fix that in post. We can do a little bit more damage with photos in post, but when it comes to video, all right. So we're nice and level. We're nice and level now. So that's good. So that's little spirit level, like $10 on Amazon. Super easy. All right. So hopping back over here to this little guy, so we can see our overall setup. Let's see. Let me make sure. All right. So kind of two things to me that are so helpful about why I use this app, aside from the ability to be able to control the camera from the iPad, the other thing that is super helpful and just helps to contribute to more professional looking video is being able to lock our focus and to lock our exposure. So I'm going to show you how to do that here. And if you are new to Filmic Pro and Filmic Remote, there are like a bajillion super in-depth videos here on YouTube that you can find and get like the nitty gritty in depth. So I'm not going to go in depth on the app here today. We don't have time for all that, but there's some great videos. I'll be sure to link them in the description box after, but like just Google Filmic Pro settings and you'll find a treasure trove of great stuff. So the reason that we want to lock our exposure, first of all, is if you've ever taken shots of, you've ever shot a video and you've shot it on your phone or shot in automatic mode, and you notice, like, as you do different movements or you bring different things into the frame, all of a sudden it gets brighter and darker, and like the exposure changes because you're altering, the brightness of the scene. And so the camera, whether that be your, DSLR or mirrorless or your phone, is going to compensate for that. Well, the problem is, especially if we speed up that footage, like those, sped up hands and pans, kind of like we're doing here today, you start to get like it just doesn't look as professional, right? Because we don't have that continuity, that consistency factor is such a key to professional looking video. So just that is one of the really helpful things in this app, is that we can come in and we can lock the exposure. And so we do that. If you're here in the app, you've got the little circle and you've got the little square. So this little circle, not sure. Oh yeah, you can see it, that little red circle. Wherever I want to kind of sample the exposure from. So I'm going to take the brightest spot in the image, right? I'm going to open it up, just tap it. That makes it turn white. And then that's going to kind of base the exposure based on the brightness of that spot. And then I just hit it again to lock it. And so now, no matter what I introduce to the scene, it's going to be locked. We're going to be good to go. And then this little guy over here, the square, locks our focus. So again, we think about focus in terms of that plane of focus starting at the top and working downward. So whatever is like the tallest thing in our scene, or whatever is our primary subject. Now I have my basil over here, which I've had covered. Let's go ahead and take off the covering on the basil. You know that trick on the basil, right? So I bought the basil at the grocery store yesterday. And if you buy basil at the grocery store, it starts to look sad the next day. Well, if you just put it in a little glass of water and then leave it in the room, don't take it out, like don't put it in the fridge. Basil doesn't like the fridge. And then it's good, it's still fresh. Just make sure to get your little plastic baggie, keeps it nice and fresh, okay? Because basil loves to wilt, especially when it's store-bought, because my basil plants are looking sad these days. It's not the time of year for beautiful basil. All right, so there we go. So again, the basil is not the focal point of this image. So what we're going to do then is I'm going to set the attention, I'm going to set the focus based on the tomatoes. And if I just open that up, again, it turns white. Hit it again, and it locks it. So now the focus is locked in that spot. So even if I introduce my hands, higher up, or introduce other things to the scene, it's not going to impact the focus. The focus is not going to shift. Because again, that's another thing, that if you've ever shot overhead videos or videos in general and you've had it set up, then as the hands start coming in or different actions, like that focus starts to shift up and down. And again, kind of creates this jerky footage, looks inconsistent, just kind of makes it look much more professional if we can lock that focus and lock that exposure. And then one other thing that we can do here in Filmic, and I highly recommend, and one of the reasons that I do think that shooting with artificial light is helpful is because then we're going to get a really consistent lighting situation, that there's not going to be clouds that suddenly show up and change the light. And two, the color temperature is going to stay the same. So you can see I can open up the color temperature right here. You may be tempted to go with auto white balance. I'm going to advise against that because, again, the camera is going to change if there's any sort of change in the environment, change of what's going on. So in this case, I'm just selecting the daylight balance because that is the color temperature of the light that I'm working with. And generally the light that probably you're working with, if it's natural light, will be in that area. Although we can adjust based on the specific Kelvin if you want to go that way. If you're not familiar with color temperature and you need more information on that, I've got a whole video on white balance, just the bite shot white balance, and it should come up. All right. So we've got our color temperature set, we've got our exposure locked, we've got our focus locked, and I mean at this point we're pretty much ready to go. So we can go ahead and hit. Now we do have the ability, one more thing here, we have the ability to adjust our exposure manually. So if you hit the little button right here, this brings up our exposure settings, and what we can do, we can actually see this is 1/24th of a second shutter speed, 125 ISO. We can actually adjust this down. I generally recommend underexposing versus overexposing because it's easier to bring up brightness than it is to reclaim lost highlights. So we go ahead and dial that down. Now, if we want to check to see how that exposure is looking and like, are we overexposed or underexposed? There's also this little A button right here, which then we can bring up the zebra stripes, very fancy. And you can see, for example, if I way underexpose this, things will start to turn blue. If I way overexpose it, things will start to turn red. So we want to find a nice, happy medium. There we go. All right. So we're good to go. And then we can just hit the record button and it'll start recording. And we can also get in and adjust things like, do we want to shoot a different frame rate? Do we want, do we want to shoot 4K? Do we want to shoot a different lens? Do we want to do this, that, and the other? Now I'm noticing right here, I can actually see the little peg from my stand here. So what we can do too, let's go ahead and stop filming. I can come in here and so the focus, we can manually adjust our focus over here on the side. I'm just going to adjust the zoom, manually adjust it. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Get rid of that little guy. There we go. Ta-da! Super easy. One of the other cool things that we can also do in this same software is be able to adjust like the aspect ratio that we're working on. So if you know you're shooting something for, say, Instagram feed 4:5, you can go ahead and crop it to that. So you're seeing that, 9:16 for Instagram stories and TikTok. So it just all depends on where's the destination of that content. And there's so much in here. Again, I'm going to highly recommend you just hop on over to YouTube and just look up videos for Filmic Pro. There's some great folks out there who go in depth on all this stuff. So I love it. Linda, I'm so glad this is helpful. Yay! I love it. I love it. And so far, knock on wood, the setup is working. So that's good. Yes, good. Yeah, Raina, buying fresh herbs, it always helps. And I tell you, it just makes such a difference to like grow your own, because like the basil, if just left at room temperature, if you've grown it yourself, it'll be fine. But stuff you buy at the grocery store gets sad fast. All right. So once we've captured all of it, I hope you don't mind, I have my coffee going on here. Very important. All right, I want to make sure I got everything in there. All right, and I want to make sure we leave enough time for Q&A at the end. So now from here at this point, once I execute all of the recipe and all the actions, everything that I'm doing, then it will save all of the footage here to the phone. And then at that point, it's time to edit it. And you can, edit with whatever video editing software, if that's iMovie or, something else that you're utilizing. I have been getting into, and what I worked with my sister when we were setting things up was working with Premiere Rush. I'm kind of, very intimately involved in the Adobe world personally, in terms of all the softwares that I use. And as a Premiere Pro user, jumping into Premiere Rush was like zero learning curve. It all was super obvious. And I do think it's a pretty intuitive software. So even if you haven't edited video before, I'm going to recommend you check out Premiere Rush. There's some really cool tools in there. And so then we just can set up a new project and edit from there. So I believe I've got Premiere Rush linked down below for you as well. So that is kind of the crash course overview of all of the technology, all of the setup that I'm going to be using for, anytime. I mean, this is just such a convenient setup. I've been doing a lot more of this when I do stuff for Instagram stories, and I'm excited to play with it more because I do see that this technology just continues to get better and better. New cool things, new releases. Again, I think that Filmic Pro software is a total game changer. So, the other thing that I'm going to highly recommend too, specifically if you are doing, again, food videos and recipe videos, any videos in general, is having a storyboard, having a plan before you go into creating your video. Because if you just kind of show up and you're like, okay, I've got all my ingredients and let's just start to do, it's not going to go as well as it will if you have a plan. So a storyboard being that we have, these little, you can just make little blocks on a sheet of paper, kind of like a cartoon strip, right? 6 blocks, and then just start to draw pictures of, okay, what's the first action and how's everything composed, really planning it out ahead of time so that then when you get in here, you know exactly what you're doing. That was one of the things that in working with my sister and coaching her was okay, what is it we're trying to to communicate? Like, what do people need to know about this printable that we're shooting? What's the action? And how do we kind of anticipate what we're doing beforehand? So then you just feel more confident, because sometimes too, like you'll reach in and they go, oh wait, no, that's not exactly how I want to do it. And then, you know, maybe you've already committed to cracking an egg in something, and then you're like, crap, well, I can't go back. And then you got to redo something. So that's why just having a really good plan of like the step-by-step of what's the recipe, what's each scene going to be, that's just going to really help, so that then when you get into editing all that together, that it's not as much of covering up of mistakes, if that makes sense. So awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and open up Q&A at this point, because I've already gone 30 minutes. How did 30 minutes go so fast? Seriously, that's bonkers. Yes, you can absolutely use the iPad for editing, and actually the iPad, and then like if you go with the, you know, Pro Max iPhones, they've got the bigger real estate. It is a little easier as far as that video editing specifically. Something you can do in Premiere Rush as well is sync everything to the cloud, like to the CC cloud. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll shoot it all on the phone with the iPad, and then I'll actually sync it with the cloud and then pull it in and edit it over on my computer, just because I'm personally a little faster on the computer. But 100% you can do this all completely on the phone or the iPad. All right. I know, Cadmus, I love that color combination too. I've been using it a lot more in Instagram, so glad you like that too. Cilantro. Oh, cilantro. Okay, there is a video on my channel. If you just Google or go to YouTube and look for The Bite Shot, Keeping Herbs Fresh, I have a whole video that walks through all of the main herbs like parsley, cilantro, because they're all unique. So go check out that video. Can you shoot in high speed? Yes, Rick. If we go into Filmic Pro, believe we can go ahead. Let me now, there may be limitations based on the phone that you're shooting with. So, you know, there may be settings that work here, and then you're like, Joni said I could shoot in 4K. Well, this phone shoots in 4K. This is the 11 Pro, but you know, maybe depending on which phone you've got. But if I go into the settings and frame rate, there's options on this particular camera. I can go up to 60 frames per second. So 60 frames per second, for those who aren't familiar with video terminology, you remember back to elementary school, and I mean, I know I did this as a kid, and you get the little flip books where you like draw a picture of a man, and then you draw another picture, like the next movement and the next movement and the next movement, and then you flip through the book, and like it looks like motion's going on. It's effectively what our cameras are doing. It's just taking a bunch of still photos, one after another, lining them all up, and it looks like it turns into video. So in terms of frame rates, it's how many frames per second are we seeing. So 24 frames per second is generally what we'll recommend for videos like what I was just shooting, so that things look fluid. I record my YouTube videos, it kind of depends on what mood I'm in, but 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. 24 is going to give a little bit more fluid because there's less frames there, but our brains are so good at connecting frame to frame. 30 is going to look a little bit more, I don't know, hard to describe it. The video nerds out there will have a good expression for how to explain it, but just looks a little bit more like precise, but it can look a little more jumpy. To me, but then you've got 60 frames per second, which we can then slow down that because there's so many frames packed in there. And if we play 60 frames per second in real time, it looks a little strange, like it looks a little too real to life, if that makes sense. Whereas if we slow it down though to like 40%, in terms of slowing that down, then we get those like cool pour shots and action shots, and 120 frames per second, even more. So those of y'all who are like Peter McKinnon fans, y'all know that the slow-mo B-roll action, that's all high frame rates. All right. Pallavi, I'm using the Godox SL150, and this is the new silent one, which is silent. So anybody who's been wondering, I went and bought it, and sure enough, I opened it up. I was like, oh, it's quieter than my aperture light, which I was surprised at. I've got all the gear for this link down below. All right. So many questions. All right, let's try something. Let's try something fun. Here we go. Let's see, does this work? Oh, I love this. We're overlaying comments. Again, I told you we're trying new things today. When you're shooting, should you be shooting just for one platform, for YouTube and TikTok separately? It's a great question. Thank you for asking it, Jack. So you think about the aspect ratio. Now, I would say it is hard, obviously, if you need to shoot something vertical horizontal, and then you need it vertical, right? Because of course, you know, that TikTok situation. Now, what I have been doing for the TikToks, because again, I'm still kind of getting used to that world as well and experimenting with it, but I just I shoot my videos from further back, if that makes sense. So I don't frame it in the same way, but to use a YouTube video in that way, then I'd be kind of too far away. So it really changes the framing. I mean, certainly anytime like I shoot like an overhead video for a client, I try to keep the action all center weighted so that if they do end up cropping it, like I'll shoot it horizontally at the 1080 by 1920, or if we're doing 4K, whatnot. But then I'll make sure everything's happening in the center. So then if they decide they want to like crop it for Instagram feed, that we don't lose any of the important action. So that is something you can do. But I would say, I do think it's important to create the content based on the actual destination of it, just from like a quality standpoint. But if you're multi-purposing things and if you can find a good balance in there, then do it. But sometimes it's hard to get around not shooting something specifically for one platform versus another. Fortunately, the TikTok platform, it's all super short, and Reels all super short. So, you know, you finish the YouTube video and then you just get like one little action, or you get something shorter in there. Maybe that's a good workflow. Helen, what is the best export settings to use? So I have just been exporting based on the, it depends on where it's going, right? So if it's, for example, if I was going to put something in Instagram stories, I'll generally just go with the resolution. Let me see what it is. If I go back into Premiere Rush and export, let's see. Trying to remember exactly. I mean, I'm pretty much just preserving whatever it was shot in. And again, I personally still shoot mostly 1920 by 1080 HD. I'm not doing a lot of 4K just because 4K files, seriously, it's just like so much work. And if it's going to be condensed down and compressed and put onto Instagram anyway, you know. But let's see, export. If you're in Premiere Rush, again, this will kind of vary depending on the platform that you're using. I've already exported it. So it's like, no, you just exported this. Oh, quality settings. There we go. 1080 and matching the frame rate. So pretty much matching whatever it is. If you're in Premiere Pro, matching that footage with the H.264 export. Again, it just all depends on what you're working with. But just making sure that we're sizing it appropriately, similar to how we size still images in that same regard, but exporting then to the MP4. All right. Hi, Ricardo. What's up? Storage devices, external hard drives. Yeah. So there are definitely a lot of options in terms of storage devices. You know, you can definitely get those little, what are they? The lacy, let's see. Oh, those little lacy, memory hard drives. You can definitely get some external hard drives. That can be a great solution. Depends on what you want to do and how hyphy you want to get. If you go to thebiteshot.com/thebiteshot, THE-BYTE-SHOT, Mr. Simon, it's not a well formatted document, so fair warning there, but Mr. Simon has fully documented all of the gear and the memory and all of that jazz in terms of computers that I have. I will say I'm not a computer expert, so I don't want to stake claim to any of that, but we utilize this Synology network area storage here at the studio, at the house, where we're all networked and connect that way. And then any client files, then I share with them over on Photo Shelter. And then I also store those raw files and everything over on Photo Shelter, sort of like that fail safe as well. So hopefully that helps. And if you go to thebiteshot.com and you just go up to my gear, I believe the ByteShot, the BYTE shot information is also linked on the gear page as well. Kind of all roads lead back to that gear page, which I think is actually linked here. Links and links and links, all the links. Raneem, how do you prevent that food from looking dull or faded? That's definitely all about, we talk about, again, having that game plan. So like the basil, you can see I kept that covered until we were ready to shoot because I wanted, again, it to be at its freshest. But if you have a good game plan going in and you kind of can anticipate where we're going, you can really save time. So it's all about spending time ahead of time so that we're not spending as much time in the execution of things so that they look their best. What is up? What's your 2-year-old daughter's name? I want to say hi to her. Editing on Android phones, Premiere Rush. Premiere should work on Apple and Android as well as an Adobe product. All right. Let's see, you have a very small kitchen, all white. You're finding trouble with lighting using the 16 millimeter f1.4 and also the 18 to 135 kit lens. Any help? Well, you know, as far as like the lens, that's not going to have much impact in terms of, that's not going to have an impact in terms of your exposure unless, for example, that f1.4, you can go really wide, which will let a lot of light in. So that's definitely an option. Although shooting food at f1.4, it's a little too narrow depth of field, so you start to lose the subject. So if you haven't, you know, if you're in a home situation and you haven't dived into artificial lighting, again, I can't encourage it enough just because I know that was me. You know, I was very resistant to learn it because I'm, trying to figure out what's the best window in this house. And, and now I know the good windows and all that, jazz, but at the same time, just the control and versatility, and just the sheer power and output that you'll get from your light if you start venturing into the artificial light. I promise, it's not a scary world. It's a lot of fun. I'm making new converts of artificial light every day. Oh, it's like the reason I think I was put on this planet, to get everybody learning artificial light. So Elizabeth, as far as how do you connect the iPad and the iPhone so that they work together in Filmic Pro? Great question. I think I glossed over this one. So if you go into the settings on your phone, let's see if I can do this with the second camera. Boop. Oh, wait, no, this will work. Oh yeah, no, I do have to show it to you on the phone. Okay, we hit the little settings button. Can you see that? Can you see that? Make sure I'm at the right spot. Okay. If you hit the little settings button, and then if you hit, what is it? Device? Yes. Remote control. Switch on remote control. And then what will happen is when you jump onto your iPad and you open up Filmic Remote, it will automatically, as long as the Wi-Fi is connected and you're on the same network, it should automatically do it. All right? That should hopefully get you in there. Woo! There we go. There's our tomatoes. Such a nut. Y'all love shooting tethered. Every time I see somebody shoot tethered for the very first time, it's always the thing people are like, oh, I can see my hands in the scene, right? I did it too. We all do it. All right. Oh, David, yes. Artificial light is so much easier to control. And you can move a light, but you can't move a window, right? That's the other fun part. Glad you like that, the kitchen whisperer. Awesome. Glad that worked. Yeah, there's so many settings in Filmic Pro. That is the thing to pay attention to, because but again, there's like some great videos where it's like they go step by step through all the basic setups, like the basic settings. So that's a good one. Maybe I'll have to make that video at some point. Coming to a YouTube channel near you. All right. Let me see how we're doing. Let's see. I think we're doing good on questions. Okay, we did that one. Oh, iPhone 11. Oh, so you can definitely, okay, great question. Let me throw it up here. Question, if you shoot with an iPhone 11, or any phone in general, as far as editing the video footage. Now, you can certainly use the video footage coming straight out of the camera and rock and roll. If you want to add a little pizzazz to it in terms of filters, Filmic Pro does have some LUTs available. So if you get into Adobe Premiere Pro, you can install or DaVinci Resolve is actually a free software. I'm currently in the process of learning DaVinci Resolve because I do want to kind of of dig more into that, it's a free software and super great for color grading. So there are LUTs available from Filmic Pro that, especially if you go with the cinematographer's kit, which is like another level of shenanigans, and also an additional $13, but it allows you the ability to shoot in a log or a flat profile, and then you can kind of color grade on your own. So it's kind of like if you're familiar in the stills world of shooting in RAW, and then, processing your images in Lightroom or Capture One or whatever you're editing your photos in, same sort of idea with video footage. So especially too, if you're in a situation with a lot of dynamic range, so we're going from like dark shadows to bright skies, so especially applicable for outdoor shooting. And there's lots of, again, examples on YouTube of this that you will want to shoot then in a flat profile, so then you or in a log profile, so then you are able to get all of that dynamic range. Like it's hard to explain. I haven't explained it before, so my brain hasn't fully wrapped around how to communicate it. But effectively what it is, it's like shooting in RAW for video. And then you go into post and you can either adjust your own settings, like in Lumetri Color, or utilizing those LUTs that you can purchase. And actually the Filmic Pro ones, the D-Log, it does a really great job. So, that footage looks kind of a little flat if you do shoot in log, and then you throw that LUT on it, and it's like, oh, that was great, and just like literally one touch of a button. So that is absolutely an option. Or if you use Premiere Rush, there are some filters in there as well. There's like a Kodak one that looks pretty cool, and so those are kind of some quick on the fly. Sometimes, because I'm like a color control nerd, those can get a little weird, especially for food. They're maybe better for people or landscapes or things like that. Food in general, I like to keep things looking natural, or like, because if all of a sudden the tomato is like looking like a different color than tomatoes look, it starts to look unappetizing. So hopefully that helps you out. I do have a video on storyboard making. If you go to my playlists, there is there's a playlist series. If you just go to the Bite Shot on YouTube, if you go to my YouTube channel, the main page, and then you go into playlists, and there's one all about videos. It's like a 4-part series. Now that's all video on a DSLR, but there is a how to plan videos, and I go through the whole storyboarding process there. All right. How are we doing on time? Oh, I got 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left. Gooseneck phone holders. I am not familiar with the gooseneck phone holders. I've been super happy with this guy. And again, just in terms of something that's solid, this has been a champ. So, if there are any other really great phone holders though, for this overhead situation, definitely let me know. Specific lens for food photography and videography. Great question, Cadmus World. It's always a complex question, right? Actually, if you check out the video I did, 2 weeks ago on gear for a home photography studio, I go into it. So go check out that video. What mic do you recommend to work with the iPhone? Have you ever heard of the Movo? Unfortunately, I am not familiar with the mic situation. Most of the video that I am creating for this kind of work with the phone is all going to be silent. So when I get into the editing, I just take off the audio or just mute it, depending again on the software that we're using. If anybody has any recommendations though, feel free to pop those in the chat. It's definitely something for me to look into, because I'm not usually like I do actually, most of the B-roll that you see on my YouTube channel is shot with my phone, because it's so much easier than working with the DSLR. I feel y'all on that. I know how to work all the fancy cameras. I'm like, no, phone, easier. Let's just do that, right? I love it. What's your thought on the phone lens? Any recommendations? So I've only ever used the cameras that are on the phone. I know there's like all those attachments. Again, I've just recently, maybe in the last, what has it been since my sister came to me 3 or 4 months ago, just utilizing what is available in the phone itself. Now the iPhone 11 does have the 3 separate camera situation, but honestly, I'm just using the main wide lens that's kind of the standard in there, and then I'm adjusting with the zoom in, zoom out feature, as you saw me use in the Filmic remote. So that's been working just fine for me. I mean, certainly I'm sure there's some hyphy stuff. For any of you too who want to get like more nerdy into some of those accessories, Andrew Scrivani on Creative Live, he has a smartphone course that is over there. I'm not sure how much it costs or the details of it, or it was running a bunch a couple months ago, kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. So I'm not sure the details on it. I haven't checked it out in a while, but I know he goes into some of those additional attachments that you can throw onto it. I have shot video. Oh no, I have. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Lynn, great question. Hi, Lynn. Good to see you, Lynn. Oh, thank you, Seville. I appreciate it. Let's see. Lynn. Yes, I've shot one video for a restaurant customer. I admittedly don't get into the shooting video on location thing. Like, I am very specific in my videos that I shoot, which are all, in studio, controlled environment, things like that. I did have a situation. Oh, this was so sad, and so frustrating, but we solved it. There's always a solution. So, longtime restaurant customer, I was doing stills photography for them. And he's like, hey, I really need a video. I was like, I don't do restaurant videos. Like, cause that's like a whole other thing, right? Cause then you got the gimbals and the stabilization, and I probably wouldn't, I mean, you probably could at this point, but this was 2 years ago. Wouldn't have shot that on a phone. I would have shot that, but that is not my wheelhouse. So I said, let me refer out another company. And so I didn't know of any local video companies that did that kind of video. So went on a recommendation from a friend. So it was like a friend of a friend, and sent that referral on. They hired him, and then like the person took the money, did the shoot, and then just like disappeared and never delivered the video. It was so frustrating. I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt like, oh, such a turd. And the client, fortunately, again, good friend, somebody who I've known in the restaurant industry for years, and is like, it's not your fault, Joni. It's okay. Like, this happens. Yes, it's frustrating. I was like, no, I'm going to make this better. So I went in and did a video in that restaurant, but like, that's it. I'm not doing restaurants, because I do think like there's a whole other level of skills. There's a whole other, I mean, just like shooting food photography versus shooting portraits photography, like there's definitely translations there, but I find that there are different workflows, there are different things to leveraging that. So, hopefully that answers your question. And hopefully that never happens to any of y'all. I love it. Can I watch the video back? Yes, absolutely. Because yeah, I'm going to wrap up here. Yes, this will all be available for replay on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So I just want to say thank you so much for everybody hanging out here with me today. We had quite the party, and I think I did the technology. Did it all work? We didn't have any failures. I'm so surprised. We had overlaid comments. We had multiple camera angles. I mean, wow. What a day. See, you can do it. Just try new things. What's the worst that could happen, right? Could have all not worked. It would have been fine. It's all good. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day. I do have a new video coming next Thursday. This one is such a long time coming. I have gotten request after request for years for this one. It's all about tripods, all the ins and outs of tripods, what you got to think about and consider in purchasing a tripod for food photography. So that will be next Thursday, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, so 7 a.m. Pacific Time. But anyway, have a great rest of the week. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon, okay? Adios, amigos.